This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth with a bombshell report today exposing the deep state in Canada, the secret government that has been manipulating our political leaders and society behind the scenes. This is something I've been talking about for years now. In fact, this is also something that was written about in this book, Propaganda, written by Edward Bernays, published in 1928. It's a really important read. I would suggest you check it out. It's not a large book. You could do it in an evening. So I want to preface this video today by reading just the first opening paragraphs of Propaganda so you can have a better idea of what we're actually dealing with here. This is what he says in chapter 1 for the opening of the book. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our taste formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. Now keep that in mind as we go through this report. Canada, Feds advised to bring the focus back to the majority to counter the threat of populism. It says here, newly released documents show senior government officials were advised to bring the focus back to the majority instead of on the diversity values in public communications to counter the threat of populism in Canada. The task force deputy ministers heard this idea, among many, during meetings last year, looking at what the government could do to guard against a possible rise in extremism and populism domestically. The group was told to encourage more public conversations and debate focused on us rather than us versus them narratives to foster social cohesion. So we're already seeing the language creep into their narrative here. They want to encourage more public conversations that will foster social cohesion. A briefing note prepared for the senior civil servants warned that if only marginalized populations are considered, well, the result would be that others feel as if they do not matter. Social cohesion must become a new lens of policy making. Oh, really? In order to achieve this, the government needs to build connections across differences, foster greater empathy, and bring us back the focus back to the majority, i.e. middle groups, officials wrote in the documents. Can't we all just get along as one big happy family? This is globalization talk. This is one world government talk, as we will get into. Now, just who is spewing this? Who is telling our government officials that this is what needs to be done? The suggestions originated from an international expert invited to speak to the Deputy Minister Task Force on diversity and inclusiveness back in October of 2018. The Canadian press obtained a copy of the presentation and other documents to the task force under the Access to Information Act request. Tim Dixon, co-founder of the UK-based think tank More in Common, told the task force that Canada is facing the same disruptive forces playing out in other countries that can fuel polarization and division. Oh no. Although Canada may be more resilient to these forces due to past successes in building an inclusive national identity. He said polarization of opinion can cause some to become resentful of minority groups perceived to be getting social benefits such as housing or social assistance at others' expenses. These sentiments are most common among a majority of people who fit into a middle group category, marked by moderate views between the extremes of cosmopolitans with open values and nationalists with closed values. The language is getting a little more bold. I hope you're understanding the connections here, what they're trying to present: cosmopolitans with open values and nationalists with closed values. That's why Canada was advised to build social solidarity by avoiding pitting the interests of one group against another in public communications. Rather, Canada should elevate the more in common message and demonstrate the falsehood of narratives of division according to Dix's presentation. The documents show that after the meeting, officials discussed ways the government could incorporate the advice into federal policy. Hang on a sec. Shouldn't that be a part of the meeting? Let's read that again. The documents show that after the meeting, officials started discussing ways the government could incorporate the advice into federal policy. Now here's where we venture into the area that would make Bernays incredibly proud. One idea put forward was possibly using Canada's school system with its massive integration power to educate and connect people in order to build more empathy and social cohesion, according to a summary of the discussion among the deputies. Guys, they are literally saying they want to use the education system because of its massive integration power to educate and connect people in order to build more empathy towards and social cohesion. This is something straight out of propaganda. Let's read this one more time, guys. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes are formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. Folks, Bernays knew what he was talking about. This was published again in 1928. I strongly recommend you pick up a copy. Let's continue. When it comes to future communications, Deputy Minister stressed the need to focus on shared values rather than diversity values when framing the social cohesion narrative. So now they're just flat out saying, this is what we're doing. We're telling you how to think. You know, we need to focus on shared values rather than diversity values when framing the social cohesion narrative. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appears to have already taken this advice to heart in his political messaging in the lead up to the federal election. So he's implementing these changes through his speech, saying things like this. During a Liberal fundraiser event last month, Trudeau stressed the need to seek common ground and compromise among Canadians when asked about countering populist sentiment in the campaign. We've always learned to listen to each other, he says. Find common ground, figure out ways to move forward that bring people along. The idea is that we are a country of diversity, a country of broad range of views, and the responsibility we have is to try to bring those views together in a forward path, really. We can find things that Canadians understand are that right balance, and that for me is the counter to populism. Couldn't have been written by Tim Dixon any better himself. In fact, maybe he did write it. Let's take a look at just who this guy is. Who is Tim Dixon? Tim Dixon is a social movement builder who was born in Australia, worked for several years in New York, and is now based in London, where he co-founded Purpose Europe. He trained as an economist and tech sector lawyer, built a leading Australian educational publishing business that was bought by Pearson in 2004, and he worked as chief speechwriter and economic advisor for 2 prime ministers. I'll read that again. He was the chief speechwriter, an economic advisor to 2 prime ministers. He's helped to start and grow social movement organizations around the world to protect civilians in Syria, engage citizens in the peace process in Colombia, address modern-day slavery, promote gun control in the United States, reduce inequality, and engage faith communities in social justice. Guys, this is a modern-day propagandist right here. This is a guy who would make Bernays proud. This is the guy who is a modern-day propagandist manipulating society behind the scenes. You want to know who the actors in the deep state are, folks? Take a look at Tim Dixon. Now let's continue. This is where things get really scary too. Gesturing towards a group of pipeline protesters outside the event, Trudeau quipped that none of them were carrying any signs promoting a message of compromise. A point that he used to highlight that many of the loudest voices are on the peripheries and do not reflect the opinions of the majority of Canadians. Social media is amplifying some of those voices, Trudeau added. Another point echoed from the discussions and research studied by the task force. So he was told by the task force, and now this is what he's saying. Dixon's presentation warned government officials that they need to be mindful of how social media may distort data. What? They're the ones distorting data by wanting to take over the education system and use it as a mechanism to essentially brainwash the youth, the leaders of tomorrow into believing this stuff. But he says it's those of us on social media who are distorting data. The majority of people are not involved in the debate and do not like division. But it is those on social media who are the most vocal, and it could give disproportionate weight to certain issues. So they have a propaganda wing that's promoting this all-inclusive can't we all get along global government idea to be pushed forth through Trudeau, and they're going to silence the opposition to this message. Guys, this is strong propaganda coming from the Canadian government. This is proof of the deep state working behind the scenes. This is something I've been trying to warn you about for years now. You may recall I put out this video, George Soros in the Canadian Agenda Exposed. Highly recommend that one. I will have links in the description below. Also, check out this one, my interview with G. Edward Griffin, with the KGB agent who predicted everything. And in this interview, this KGB agent outlines how propaganda is utilized, how they use the school system, and how they can manipulate an entire society's opinions through a couple of generations by taking over the schools. And that's precisely what's happened here in Canada. We also put this one out a couple of months ago, Trudeau Liberals to release social media influencers in the lead up to the federal election. So they're taking this propaganda idea to the next level by hiring famous, society influencers to spew this narrative. So I hope you see exactly what's happening, guys. This country is being manipulated behind the scenes. It has been for years. And Tim Dixon is just one of the many deep state operatives who are manipulating society and our political leaders behind the scenes. Did you know I actually confronted some of our political leaders on this? Maxime Bernays of the People's Party of Canada, for example, I confronted on this. I brought up the notion of a deep state and a secret government, and I asked him if he is aware of such a thing in Canada, and he was like, the deep state, secret government, what's that stuff? And just completely played dumb. But then shortly after, we started to see tweets where he changed his tune, and I put out this video, a future world government will destroy Canada, he says. Maxime Bernays finally listens to Dan Dix. Yeah, maybe he got the message that there is indeed a deep state working behind the scenes, manipulating society. So that's what's happening here, guys. So I just wanted to bring that one to your attention. This is a bombshell report. And I think to end this one, it's important to recognize the patterns that we're seeing with our political leaders, and the fact that voting in the next guy is not going to solve the problem with what Trudeau is currently doing, because as we're seeing, it's not necessarily him. He's a puppet. There are bad actors behind the scenes manipulating things here. So I want to leave you today with a series I made called the Democracy Deception, guys. And it was back during the campaign years back. I got the Harper Deception, the Trudeau Deception, Mulcair, and the May Deception. But what I want you to watch is the Democracy Deception. This is my sum up of why voting is not the answer for how to deal with the problems that we currently have. So please, guys, check the links in the description below for those videos, for all the sources of this report. Verify this information for yourself, and you will find that, yes, indeed, this is true. It's something I've been warning about for years, and it is indeed very real, and it's happening now. Guys, click the thumbs up button if you appreciate the information I'm sharing in this video. Share this video with your friends and family. Let them know that this is indeed happening. I've been shouting about it at the rooftops for years, but now we're starting to have the documents revealed, and you can point them to these documents now, officially. So click the thumbs up button if you found this information to be useful. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and stay tuned. We're going to have more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.